Hi there. Today I'm going to show you some simple tips and tricks, some beginner tips and tricks to help you do well at the card game called Gin Rummy. Now for this version of the Gin Rummy in this video, I'm looking at the Gin Rummy that plays with 10 cards each, and you have 2 players, yourself and your opponent. And the object of Gin Rummy, as a sort of a brief overview, is to get 3 of a kind or 4 of a kind, as in all the same number, the same rank in your cards, and also is to get consecutive sequences of the same suit. So you can see that 10 Jack Queen and Spade Spade Spade, and you need at least 3 of those and at least 3 of those to get a sort of a meld or a run that you can count towards your Gin Rummy, and then your remaining cards become your deadwood, and the deadwood counts against you at the end of the game, and the kings, queens and jacks are all worth 10 points against you, and then the ace are worth 1. And then all the other cards are worth the value on the cards. That's obviously 7 points. And 7 points against you. Okay. As you're playing Gin Rummy then, everyone gets a turn in order. And your choice then is either to pick up that known card from your discard pile, or to pick up the unknown card from the top of the deck. And if I look at my hand then, I don't really need that 2 of diamonds, so I'll pick up the top card from the discard pile, and that's the 6 of clubs, so I don't need the 6 of clubs, so I toss that out. And that leads then into the first tip, is when should you pick up a card from the discard pile. And I'd suggest you'd only pick up a card from the discard pile if it adds on to one of your existing sequences or 3 of a kinds, or it actually creates a new 3 of a kind or a new sequence in your hand. So say for instance then you've got the 7 of hearts there, which has just been discarded by your opponent, then I'd jump on that 7 of hearts, because pick it up and put it in your hand, because then that gives you another 3 of a kind, and you'd probably throw out the king in that case, and then you're just left with three sort of melds in your hand, and you're just left with an ace 1 point as your deadwood. So I'll just reverse that out. And say for instance then another scenario is that your opponent has thrown out the king of diamonds, and so you have a choice then of picking up the king and obviously throwing out the ace, and that'll give you 2 sevens and 2 kings, and then obviously just got to wait for a 7 or a king to get another 3 of a kind. But I'll throw that back out again. But I'd be reluctant in that situation to pick up the king, because it doesn't actually complete or add to doesn't add to one of your existing 3 of a kinds or sequences, or doesn't complete a new one, and that also. Your opponent will be watching the cards that you pick up. So if you pick up a king, then he would be reluctant to throw out another king, because he realises that you are now collecting kings. And that leads into the next sort of tip, is that you also should be watching the cards that your opponent picks up, and make sure that you don't sort of throw one of those cards out as well, if you could help it. So for instance then, say for instance your opponent picked up that king, and he threw out another card, then you'd realise then that he was collecting kings, and you should be reluctant then to throw out that king, and because that would give him another king. Then he'd have either 3 or 4 kings then in his hand, and he's well on his way to doing well in that round of Gin Rummy. Now the next tip that I'd like to share with you is to try to get rid of your higher value cards that are part of your deadwood. So obviously that King of Hearts, it's not in one of your existing sequences or three of a kinds. So you'd be keen to get rid of that king early in the game because you don't want to be caught with that deadwood. And if you're caught with that king in your hand at the end of the game, then you automatically give 10 points to your opponent. So if you saw the 2 of diamonds there, then you might, even though that goes against the my last tip of not picking up cards that don't sort of complete a three of a kind or a sequence, but you might pick up that 2 of diamonds in that case and throw out the king, and that leaves it, you're swapping 10 points of deadwood for 2 points of deadwood, which is probably isn't a bad strategy. Or if you decide against picking up the 2 and hope for something better in the deck, then if you pick up that card, which is a 6, which doesn't really help you in any way, but what you'd probably be keen there to do is hang on to the 6 and get rid of the king, because then that gets rid of 10 points of deadwood and replaces it with 6 points of deadwood. Now another tip I'd like to share with you is to hang on to high value pairs at the beginning of the game. So say for instance, rather than those 2 7s in my hand, I had 2 kings instead, then I might be keen to hang on to those kings, say for the first, maybe 10 turns, which is first part of the game, and just to see whether I was lucky enough to get another king either from the deck or thrown out by my opponent. And say my opponent then had one king in his hand that wasn't part of a sequence or anything, then he'd be keen to get rid of that king early, so because he wouldn't want to get caught with that 10 points of deadwood in his hand. And if he throws out the king, then I'd pick that up definitely, and that gives me 3 of a kind, and then I discard the 6 in this instance, and then I'm left with 2 3 of a kind and 1 sequence and just an ace of deadwood. So yeah, so the tip is maybe for the first 10 turns to hang on to some to your high value pairs, and see if you're lucky enough to get another one to complete a 3 of a kind before you start discarding those. But you definitely wouldn't want to be caught with 2 kings in your hand at the end of the game. Okay, so the next tip I'd like to show you is what I call triangle cards, and to do that I'll get rid of those 2 kings, and I will bring back my 2 original 7s. And imagine if I didn't have that 6 of clubs there, but instead I had the 6 of spades, then in the deadwood then I've created a triangle. So you can see there that I've got a 7 and a 7, which so I've got a pair of 7s, but I've also got the 6 and the 7 of spades. So then in that for that triangle, then there's 4 cards. Any one of 4 cards will complete either a 3 of a kind or a sequence. So I'm either waiting for one of the 2 7s, I'm waiting for the 5 of spades or the 8 of spades. So you can see there that suddenly with that triangle, rather than just waiting for one of the 7s, then I've actually got 4 cards that I can wait for. So I've got 4 chances, rather than 2 chances, of picking up one of the cards that I need to complete another 3 of a kind or another sequence. So these next lot of tips all involve finishing the game of Gin Rummy, and finishing the game of Gin Rummy is usually called knocking, and obviously you knock the table when you're ready to lay your cards out, and everybody stops playing and sees who the winner. So hopefully the person who knocks is the person that wins, and you're allowed to knock as soon as you've got deadwood that's less than or 10 points or less. Deadwood that's worth 10 points or less, and I've got deadwood that's 7, 14, 20, 21 points, so I can't knock yet. But say for instance then it's my turn and I pick up the 9 of spades. That's a good one, so I'll put that there with the 10 and the queen, the jack and the queen, and that gives me a sequence with 4 cards. And then I might Might still hope for getting 2 7s, so I'll throw out the 6. And then my opponent has a go, and then it's my go again. And say, for instance, I pick up, I pick up 5. That's pretty good. So suddenly I pick up the, I've got 4 5s then. I've got to discard a card, which I'll throw out one of the 7s. And that leaves me with 8 points in a Deadwood. So now I can knock and finish the game. Well, as soon as you knock, then you lay your cards out, and your opponent lays their cards out. And hopefully their Deadwood is more than 8. And usually, hopefully, if it's early in the game, it's always good to knock if it's early in the game, because then you can catch them with catch them with some high cards still in their hand. So yeah, okay. So just so say for instance then, another scenario is I didn't pick up the 5 and I didn't pick up the 9, say. But then I picked up the next, I'll put those over to one side. Say for instance my go then, and I'm back to where I sort of started from. And then I pick up the 7. And okay, so I'll pick up the 7. I'm going to discard the 6 because that's higher than the ace. And then you can see that obviously I've got Deadwood that's less than 10. Or 10 or less, and I can knock now if I want to. But another good strategy, if you've only got one card and it's an ace, it's a really low card as your Deadwood, then sometimes it's worthwhile hanging on and going for the undercut bonus. And the undercut bonus is you just keep playing as normal. Your opponent doesn't realise that you've only got an ace as your Deadwood, and you're hoping your opponent will knock when he might have 5 or 6 or 8 points in his hand, and suddenly you lay your cards down and you've only got Deadwood of an ace, 1 point, and then suddenly you get a 10-point bonus. So you actually win that hand, even though your opponent's knocked. You win the hand, you get 10 points plus whatever the value of all the Deadwood that's in his hand. And another good reason to hang on to that ace is, say for instance you keep playing and then you pick up the next card, and you're lucky enough to get the king as your next card. So you shove the king in there, and you lay out the ace, and there you've got a complete gin rummy. So you've got no Deadwood, and you knock and lay it down, and that gives you a 20-point bonus. That hand, you've got a 20-point bonus on, and plus whatever the Deadwood in your opponent's hand for getting a complete gin rummy. And yeah, so that's that. No, obviously, the gin rummy I play with, it's first to 100 points. So you're getting a 20-point bonus, a 10-point bonus is a good thing, and you're well on the way to getting to your 100 points before your opponent and winning gin rummy. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've found the tips entertaining and interesting. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.